Hello everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 2 of a place further than the universe, which is apparently Antarctica. But yeah, I'm super excited. We just now got to meet these characters. We know about Shirase, we know about Kamari. They've developed a very fast friendship, and Shirase wants to go to Antarctica in search of her missing mother. So, and Kamari wants to have the adventure of springtime of youth. So this seems like it's going to work out real good for the both of them. So we'll just see how that goes. But we left last episode with them arriving to the ship. And so I'm pretty excited to see where it goes from here. So I do have a couple comments from episode 1 that I want to talk about as it has aired on Patreon and people have been talking about it in the Discord. So Jav Gamer noted in the Discord for episode 1, fun fact, the name A Place Further Than the Universe is a reference to a statement made by the first Japanese professional astronaut, Mamoru Mori. He went on an expedition to a research base in Antarctica and said that it took longer and was more difficult to get to the base than it took to get into space. Therefore, it's a place further than the universe. That's kind of cool. I was wondering why it was a place further than the universe, but seeing them talk about how it took longer to get there than it did to outer space through a spaceship is that makes more sense now. That all kind of adds up. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Medley said on Discord for episode 1, I don't think this has been said yet, but Shirase is voiced by Kana Hanazawa, who is known as Kanahana by fans. She is a pretty big name voice actress with a fantastic range. There are some other characters that she's done that you might know of, such as Akane from Psycho Pass, which I'm like, instant heart. And Hina from March Comes In Like a Lion, which is another instant heart. So I was like, oh, it's her voice actress. Well, that's amazing. Sure, Akane and Hina are amazing characters in March Comes In Like a Lion and Psycho Pass, which if you've not seen either of those shows, stop what you're doing and write down to go watch them now because they're amazing. So they both, that voice actor's playing both of those characters and also playing to voice Shirase is pretty cool. I like that. Shirase does not seem similar to Hina or Akane, so that's interesting to me. And then Pancake on Discord noted that Kamari is voiced by Inori Minase, and she said, I think the only role that you know her from is Jean from The Case Study of Vanitas. Another good series. So I thought that was really cool. So thank you. And then now Yonitsu shared, because I had looked at the ED for episode 1 and noticed that there is a phone in Shirase's lap, and it has like an email opened up and it says to somebody and there's a subject line and everything. Yonitsu says, if you're wondering what Shirase's phone says in the ED, the actual body of the email is empty except for the sent from my iPhone line. And they did say that there is a to and from person. They spoiler tagged the to and from. It says, I don't think it's really a spoiler since Japanese speakers would be able to read it, but I tagged it just in case. I was thinking that, like, this is where the spoiler conversation in me gets a little muddled, because on the one hand, why wouldn't the streaming service just translate what it means? But it's from the ED, so they probably did not. I think, who would they be writing an email to? Well, if it's in the ED, it's probably a major character, so probably the mom, if that's the case, but we don't know that for sure. But this is where I'm torn, because part of me, and I've told the mods are amazing. Be Happy is the mod for this series, and they are amazing, and they work extra hard to make sure I'm not spoiled, especially because it's such a short series. So this is the one case where I'm kind of like, if it's there for us to see and Japanese audiences would instantly know what it says, is that okay? I think it's the mom, but I guess we'll also find out because the show's going to tell us. So spoilers can be tricky sometimes, right? So, and I'm someone that absolutely doesn't want to be spoiled, but I like talking to people about shows, so it's such a fine line to draw with that. But I appreciate you all being so kind and considerate when it comes to that, because I know it can be difficult to be like, well, what do I tell her? What's spoilers? What's not spoilers? So you all know how that goes. Anyway, so I'm pretty excited, though, to see what all we end up with this second episode. So let's dive into it, shall we? It's funny because I was about to start this, and then I realized that Pancake had also shared something else in the Discord as well that I want to talk about before we started. So they shared this thing from the wiki saying Kamari and Shirase live in Tatebayashi, Gunma Prefecture. They travel to Kure, Hiroshima Prefecture to tour the icebreaker Shirase. The trip is 997 kilometers. It's an hour and a half using 2 trains to get to Tokyo, where they can pick up the Shinkansen, about 4 hours on the Shinkansen to Hiroshima, then 40 minutes on another train to get to Kawaraishi Station. So you essentially have an hour and a half and then 4 more hours. So that's 5.5 hours and then 40 more minutes. So it's basically like 6 hours one way for the trip. Then it said the one-way fare as of 2020 was about 20,000. 20,000 and let me get this right. Put this on here. Move this around. 20,250 yen or $400 USD for the return trip. That's still $400 for a one-way train ride. That's a lot of money. I think I can take the Amtrak in the US for a round trip. Like, I mean, one way from me to Chicago, which is like a 5-hour drive, a 5-hour train ride. So it's about like an hour difference between this. It's only like $70 one way. So the fact that that's $400, that's an expensive trip for a high school student. She did win the money from the giveaway, but still, it says if Kamari left on the 8:12 a.m. train out of Tatabayashi Station and met Shirase on board the 9:50 Shinkansen, which is the time seen on the signboard in the station, look at you all catching the tiny details, they can make it to the pier by 3:05 p.m. That's a full-on day trip, though. The location can be seen in the brochure that Shirase gives to Kamari. They are cutting it close on time since the brochure says that the last tour starts at 3:30. Oh, so they're possibly... Is that spoilers? Are they going on a tour? Damn it! I guess we'll find out. Oh, it's been a long day. But regardless, we're going to start this episode. We're going to hear in 3, 2, 1, and let's dive into it. Well, this episode was not at all as I anticipated. I guess I don't know. Since it's only like 12 or 13 episodes, I don't know each week what to expect. I keep thinking, okay, well, in this very short amount of time, we have to get to Antarctica because the OP tells us we get to Antarctica, but maybe we don't get to Antarctica, but I'm assuming that we get to Antarctica. So it's like, but who knows? So I'm like, we have a very small amount of time to get there. So this episode was kind of like, oh, well, we have a plan to get there, but then it falls through. And so now we're back to square one, maybe, or square 1.5. So, and now this other girl that's in the OP has been wrangled into this by the end. She's on the train too. We don't know her story, but interesting. So I'm curious to see like what we're going to get, from here on, because next week will be a fourth of the way through the series by the time we're done, which is wild. So we start out the episode, going from Tokyo, departing from Harumi, and then you arrive back at Harumi. And I thought that we were immediately going to go to Antarctica, but no, they talk about going down towards, they cross the 55th parallel to get to Fremantle, and then they come back, from Sydney. So it says their arrival at Fremantle is on November 28th. Their departure is December 3rd. So they're there for a couple days. They're there for like 5 days, and they leave to head to Antarctica. And it says they cross in 4 days from there, the 55th parallel. And then that's when they go down, they get supplies, they go on the expedition, they get everybody set. And then as December begins, they'll set course for Antarctica. And it takes at least 4 or 5 days to get there. Okay. So yeah. Right off the bat, I love the cafe that they're in talking about this when they went to the cafe after seeing the ship. I guess it wasn't a spoiler. They did not get a tour of the ship. They just got to see it. And there's an expedition meeting taking place. So the people are probably seeing the ship and then going to the meeting, the next day or so, kind of like a conference probably to meet up. And so Shirase and Kamari meet at this cafe to talk about logistics. This is a big undertaking for a high school age student. And I'm kind of surprised, but I feel like a lot of the trips I've seen with anime, like I think of March Comes In Like a Lion, I think of some others. I definitely get, I think Neon Genesis Evangelion in that series, it was talked about when they went on the trip that was like taking a plane. I'm like, what high schoolers take planes to go on trips? But you're on an island where even by train, it's a big distance. So it's kind of more normalized in the culture for high school students in that sense. Like I'm from rural Midwest America where like taking the train for your senior trip for a vacation was a big deal. So the idea of them just getting on a plane and flying, to Australia out of the country is like, I could not imagine doing that at 17 or 18 years old. That's just so like beyond my comprehension at that age. But Shirase is like type triple A personality. That girl is like, no, we're going to do it. She is very adamant on finding her mom, which I don't blame her. She clearly has unfinished closure with her mom that has not been attained. And so she wants to see her mom to have that closure, or she at least wants to get to Antarctica to have closure if her mom is no longer with them. So that makes sense, right? Even if her mom is dead, she needs to go to Antarctica to have closure about it. And we'll talk about that when we get to the other girls that seem like they were on the trip when she was lost and what all that entails. So we'll see about that. But yeah, that's a big undertaking for a high school student to get money to go to Sydney and Fremantle. Like, that's crazy. And Shirase says, while the Shirase is in port there, we'll want to take a plane from Japan to Fremantle, and we'll want to find a way to smuggle ourselves on board. We'll board the Shirase and head for Antarctica. Yeah, so they talk about arriving in December, but then they don't depart to go back to Australia until February 22nd. So they're there all of December and all of January and all of February. So it's a 3-hour tour, a 3-month excursion. It's a 3-month trip to Antarctica before you go back. So yeah, that's most of their school year. So there's a lot of logistics to this. And while I get where Shirase is coming from, where she has had time and time again, as she said last episode, she's had people commit to the trip and then flake out and back out at the last minute. And when it's a trip that is like this, that is dependent upon a lot of financial security to make work, then she can't have people that aren't going to be serious about it because that's not going to work out for her. So I get where Shirase is coming from, where she's like, I need to know that you're locked in because I need to know you're going to not flake out on me like everybody else has. But in the same vein, Shirase is so motivated because of her mom to go on this trip that I think she kind of overlooks how big of an investment this is. This is not just the fact of getting the money to go to Fremantle and the money to go on the Antarctica trip. It's also the fact of you're going to miss 3 months of school. How is that getting approved? How is that going to work? What is Kamari's parents going to say about this, or her mom's going to say about it? Like, there's a lot of pretty big significant factors. Like, this is not a spontaneous trip you just decide to do on a whim. It's a pretty big deal. And I think Kamari kind of is privy to that, but I don't think she is as privy to that as I think some others might be. I know when I was that age, I would not be privy to it. I'd be like, yeah, let's go. I would be as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as they are. But the more they talk about it, I'm like, it's a pretty big liability. And I get why the 2 women in the expedition group don't necessarily want to bring Shirase on board, because she's not trained with the academy, or I don't know if it's an academy, but she's not in the association or the expedition team. She's not gone through the training. So it's like, it's a huge liability. And then the other 2 girls are just high school friends. So these older women are like, look, you're friends. This is a dangerous trip. You could freeze to death. You could die. Your mom is a case in point. We can't just take a bunch of kids on a random trip that aren't experienced and don't know what they're getting into. So I wonder if this series is going to actually be them going to Australia or Antarctica rather, or if it's going to be about them training and getting ready to go on the trip. And then the last episode will be them arriving. If the OP is misleading and gaslighting us into thinking that we're going to see them go to Antarctica, or if the whole thing is just gearing up to go there and doing that. If it's all just like a training to lead up to them going to Antarctica or not. I don't know. I don't want to know, but it'll be curious to see what the show is going to give us. So yeah, so the boat is manned by the SDF, and the expedition members have to pass strict screenings and training, which that's the thing. The expedition members are trained and have all these screenings that none of you have done. So how are you going to get on board? And of course, it's a very 18-year-old mentality of, oh, we'll just have somebody smuggle us in. We'll use our sexuality to do it. Felt like an episode of 30 Rock where Jenna Maloney's like, oh, we'll just use my sexuality. So the two women there, okay, they say this year is special. Okay, my question is, the one woman that's there, we had the one woman with the wavy brown hair that showed up, and then there was another woman that had the dark hair. I'm assuming she's the one that we see at the end of the episode, this year's special. And they're like the civilian Antarctic expedition to take place for the first time in 3 years, which I'm assuming is when the mom went missing. A revival of the Antarctic Challenge, the first civilian Antarctic expedition held in 3 years, has been announced. Okay, so we don't know a lot about the mom and the circumstance and what's going on, but I'm assuming we're going to learn throughout the show. But yeah, Kamari is just kind of soaking it all in, being like, this is a chance for civilians to go to Antarctica. So it's like, okay, that's a pretty realistic chance. I like how Kamari noted that when she saw the smile on Shirase's face, it was like, it kind of like was unnerving in a good way. Like it was setting things in motion. It felt like things were beginning and all that. Now we do get the confirmation. She's like, I felt a shiver run through my heart. Is this trembling what anticipation means? So she's like, I'm going to make the most preposterous, enormous plan I've ever made. And so then she looks and says, Dear Mom, and it shows her by the ship. I find it interesting that she can't send an email to her mom. I find that interesting. I'm very curious to know what is going to end with that. So, okay. So it says, we have this opening credits card. The title card says KABUKICHO Fremantle. And it says, take a picture for free. And it says Kimari and SRS Kabukizawa. And it shows like, must be 18, part-time job, seduction, and robots. Ridiculous. Stage 2. Got to get that job. So they're like short-term jobs with high pay, easy work for beginners. I love that. One thing I love about Japanese culture is that they have these like classified ads, like magazines with just jobs in them, which, you know, you think of the internet now. Well, of course we have the internet, but there's something about print ads that I just really like. So she's like, I got to buy this plane ticket. I think Megu-chan is interesting because Megu-chan seems to be like sort of not the shoulder angel or shoulder devil, but like the shoulder realist on Kamari's shoulder that's like, yeah, you could do this trip, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And I do think that there is a fine line between idealism and realism, especially in terms of something like this. Like, yes, idealistically, go to Antarctica, do all the things, live your life, springtime of youth. Realistically, how do you afford it? How do you plan this out? What are your things? I think there's a way to have both, but it's very difficult. And it's very tedious, and it requires a lot of planning. And planning and organization is not something I usually associate with 18-year-olds, because usually organization and planning comes from experience or practice or learning. And so you just don't have that on you yet. But Shirase has been planning. And she says, they're hiring high school aged girls in the hospitality industry. You just talk to boys and go on walks with them and stuff. I like Megu-chan's instantly, like, you do know what kind of job that is, right? Like $1 million yen per month. There's a reason. She's like, if they catch you, you're dead. She's like, well, I'll just turn in a part-time permission form. And she's like, you're really ignorant. And she's like, setting them aside, do you really think that they would let you go? And she's like, oh, well, Shirase sends and got me a whole thing about it, about the civilian expedition. So then there's some research, and it says they're struggling to fund 4 years ago with the completion of new stations and commissioning of a new icebreaker ship. The Shirase 2 and Saiwa stations were sold to civilian interests, but they struggle with maintenance and operation costs. I think that's interesting. So the idea that it was sold to the civilian interest group, they had a new icebreaker, And then the fact that what's interesting is the show doesn't give us a definite timeline. So we don't know as the audience yet whether Shirase's mom disappeared with the original expedition 4 years ago, or if it was 3 years ago, or what the case is. We don't know enough about Shirase and her mom yet. We're getting to that point, but we don't quite know a lot about it. Although this whole imagery with the expedition and everything reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing. Which I don't know if we want to go the Thing route, but it does like give this kind of bleak outlook. And then they show the bundle of rocks over that are like a grave over a body that's probably died. I can't imagine who that could maybe be referring to. I just think with Antarctica and the fact of the mom disappearing and probably dying, and the fact that people have died on this trip and it's been, the safety of participants can't be ensured. It reminds me of Mount Everest. I was fascinated with Mount Everest for a while, and I watched a lot of videos about it. And Caitlin Dowdery, she's the Ask a Mortician on YouTube. I love her stuff. I read her book. It's really good. But she's a mortician, and she does a lot of videos on YouTube about death, which is interesting. It sounds morbid, but it is actually kind of calming to know about it. But she did a video about Mount Everest, which I highly recommend you going to look at. It's terrifying. And people that climb Mount Everest, that there have been people die along the way, and they're just markers now because it's too dangerous to exhume their bodies, because people that have tried to exhume their bodies have also died on this mountain. And then you just become part of the mountain itself. And it's wild, but it's just kind of like this idea of not being prepared for nature and its craziness. So I sort of got those vibes from this scene when they were talking about the funding being a problem with the trip. And it said, as a result, more and more voices are speaking up against the project itself. I love this scene where the teacher asking Kamari for her to speak up and then saying, will you read the next passage? And then it says, analyzing the assertions of, why does he assert that love and courage are everything? I love the drawing the teacher did of the angel with the little board up there. That's so cute. But oh my God, this teacher is diabolical. And I've been there. When the teacher was like, would you like to read next? Here's my thing. I'm an English teacher. And so it's been a while since I've taught face-to-face. It's been a couple of years. I usually teach mostly. I do advising for the school that I work at. And I also teach online now. I do more of that than actual in-class teaching anymore. But if I had a class and students were not paying attention, or they were talking to one another rather than pay attention to the lecture, I would do this. I'd be like, so do you want to tell me what we're going to talk about next? And they'd be like, Now, would I make them write lines after class? Hell no. I don't want to look at that. But yeah. And then she reads it on the phone, which is, and what came after WOG? I like the humor of this teacher. He's like, will you please say what's next? And then she had just copied the lines 100 times. She's like, I just couldn't wait. She says there's nothing about the project being canceled for now. And even if it hasn't been canceled, it won't be that simple for you to get on. And she's like, I know. She's like, but Shirase-san is the daughter of an expedition member. And they're like, well, it's not like the nepotism only goes so far. I almost wonder if in Shirase's case, her relation to the mom is a reason why they won't let her go. It's not that, because one thing when they were having the conversation, I thought, well, what's the screening procedure? What's the training procedure? Have Shirase do that. Why hasn't she asked to do that? I don't think she cares about school as much as she cares about going to Antarctica. So why doesn't she do the training program and just ditch school for a while? I feel like there's a reason behind that. And I wonder if the women and the expedition team don't want Shirase to go because they feel she'll be emotionally compromised, or she might find out something she doesn't need to know, but then it's like, why would you hold her back from finding that out and having closure with her mom? There's clearly stuff under the surface that is not being said, and we need to know what that is, and we don't know it yet. So we just gotta wait and find out as the series shows us, but it's so interesting. I wondered if Megu-chan was maybe a little bit jealous because she she's sitting there clicking the pencil. She's asking if she's going to go see Shirase again. But then she says you should just straight up ask her about it and get an honest answer. Now, Shirase is very intense. She's talking about punctuality. She's like, I told you to find a job today. Like, she's on the borderline of pushy, because if I were her, I'd be like, calm down. But then you think about it and you're like, well, she's just really projecting the own anxiety that she has onto Kimari, because she's afraid that, this is a once in a lifetime trip to have this expedition. You don't know if it's going to happen again for another 3 years, if at all. So Shirase has all this pressure of, I want to go. This may be the only chance I have. But she's projecting that anxiety she has about herself being able to go onto Kimari, not upholding what she should when the standards are a little bit difficult, right? So she's like, well, I did find you a job today. Just you look in the hospitality industry. And she's like, yeah, I was told about that job actually. And it says, here come the Pon Pon girls. I was like, ooh, buddy. And that's when she's like, oh, really? She's like, yeah, Megu-chan had to tell me about it too. So I wanted to see if there was something on here as well. She's like, well, I'm not stupid. I just didn't know about this. So it says, high school girl outing request. Mikicha's diary. T-san, thanks for always asking me. I went out with T-san and Tada, who always ask for me. I said I love barbecue, so he took me out to that famous restaurant. And then it says, new message. Did you ask Antarctica? Now, that was from Kimari's phone. Right. Okay. And she's like, a friend of mine is asking. And that's when she's like, no big news. Did you ask Antarctica? And I get why Shirase would be a little bit worried of being like, don't try to blame this on me. And when she disappeared, like, my stomach sank to the bottom. It was like a stone sinking to the bottom of my stomach. I was like, oh my gosh. Because at first I thought that Shirase was just going off, and I was like, oh, you're not gonna hear her out? Oh, okay. Because it's almost like in that moment, Kimari regresses a little bit. She's like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to think I just shouldn't have bothered. I would rather think I wish I'd gone. I wish I'd followed her plan. That's such an interesting logic. And honestly, the psychology behind that is kind of fascinating. The idea that you would rather have regrets of going if it would have worked out than to have put in the effort and then it not worked out. That is so wild. But it happens all the time. It's like, it's almost more comforting to have missed the opportunity than to have put in the effort and for it to have been a failure. That psychology is so wild. That psychology is insane. And it's fascinating because, I feel like a lot of us do that. We would rather just not take the chance than to take the chance and for it to fail. And it's like, but if you don't take the chance, it's going to automatically fail. So it's like, what? I feel like a character from Frieren opening up a Mimic and being like, there could be something special inside. You don't know till you try. Interesting. I just couldn't believe that when she got sad, she looked over and suddenly there was Shirase, like she'd heard the whole thing. And she did wait on her, or she came back. And she's like, I've thought of a plan, but I'll explain the whole thing. So you just keep making preparations. And that's when they see the part-time job opening up that Hinata works at as well. This guy working at the store is just like, yep. Some more part-time workers. Good deal. Hinata is great. I love her extroversion. I love her tenacity. She is like type C, whereas Shirase is type A to the max, like A+++. Hinata is like type C. Like, she's super bubbly, super enthusiastic, but she just lets everything, it's like water on a duck's back. Just lets everything roll off of her and does not let anything bother her. Whereas Shirase is so type A that when things go awry, it very much would bother her. So it's so interesting to see them they're like the shoulder angel, shoulder devil on Kimari's shoulders, which is great. Also, all the boob jokes, all the bust puns, because Hinata's big chested. You know how it goes. I also love that they do the Let's Lemon Watch, the polar drink Gokunomi, the Waddell seal soda. One of the students I coach on the team loves seals. She'd be all about that. And then the Mutsuya cider and the Cola Coca Zero. Great. I love the fake product placement. It's awesome. These raccoons, these tanukis, I've got one over there on the shelf. You all can't see it, but these like lucky raccoons. Okay, so I know them from Kuroko's basketball because one of the characters in there had one originally that was like a lucky item. And apparently there's like, I'm assuming it's in this prefecture because what are the raccoons? Like the lucky raccoons in Japan. I want to know like where, the Tanuki Japanese raccoon dogs. I want to know the figurines. Where are they made? Because there's some in, the Lucky Tanuki. The Shigaraki Ware. Yeah, Shigaraki Ware Lucky Raccoon figures. Where are they from? It says Fujiwara started the business in the Meiji era. They're in Shigaraki, which I don't know how close Shigaraki is. Well, Shigaraki Ware, that would make sense. How close is Ganju to Shigaraki? How close are they? I don't know if it's going to tell me location-wise. Ganju Shiba. Nope, that's Bleach. That's going to give me Bleach characters. Never mind. You all in the comments probably know why these figurines are focused upon and what the similarity is. But yeah. And I think it's interesting that they're shown. They are kind of creepy, but I do have two of them. I was sent them. Anime Annie sent me some on Patreon. I have one in my car and one in here for good luck. But yeah, interesting. So we find out that Hinata has been eavesdropping and people watching, which I'm not surprised that Hinata has people watched. Like her being a young girl that's working this job and it seems pretty damn boring half the time. I would be people watching as well. And when you work retail and stuff, you naturally hear conversations that of course you would hear things and be like, gonna save that for later. Also, I like that she's kind of like a secret shipper of these two, which is fun. But she has a mysterious past because she is a 16-year-old that finished high school and is just waiting 2 years for exams. But is she a prodigy? Does she have a past? What's with her parents? Like, she seems pretty down to go to Antarctica. So what's her backstory? We don't know with Hinata. We don't know. She's like, well, I'd have to wait 2 years anyway. She seems very upbeat about her situation, which is curious. So whereas Shirase is kind of like very sharp and poignant and determined and resolved about finding her mom and going through with it, Hinata seems resolved, but like in an upbeat, nonchalant, like, oh, it's fine manner. But then she just gives me the vibes of somebody that would like drop a bombshell about her backstory and you'd be like, oh shit. And she'd just be like, it's cool. And you'd be like, are you sure? So we'll see where that goes. But she makes me feel very curious to know her backstory. But yeah, her and Kamari have the same idea. They're like, before we become adults, before we buckle down, before we make all these life decisions, let's go live a little bit and have an adventure, something that we can say that we did in our youth that was amazing. And so I do think that it's noteworthy that Hinata and Kamari, their whole motivation to go to Antarctica is to live a little. And Shirase's motivation is to potentially have closure with my dead mom. I think even though Shirase does not say that her mom's dead, I'm like, I don't know how she'd still be alive. I don't know how that's possible. So we'll see. So yeah, they seem like they're down for it. And I like the Shirase's like, I make the plans here. This is my gig. And they're both like, well, we didn't say it wasn't. I like that they're both like, hey, we know you're the type A one. We got this. And she's like, what are you talking about, type A? And she's like gripping her. I am very much type A as well, so I can relate to Shirase a lot, but I feel like I am typically in real life, a glass half full type A. Like everything's gonna be fine, but it's gonna be fine under these conditions. And it's like, So yeah. So they make this plan. Now, after hearing this plan and seeing it act out, I'm like, well, I don't think that was going to work. I don't think they were going to seduce a male expedition member into letting them smuggle aboard the ship. I don't think that was going to work out for them at all. I don't know why Shirase thought that that would work out. Shirase, interestingly enough, seems to have like this idea of using one's body to get what you want. And I was like, girl, y'all young, don't be doing that. I do love Hinata saying that she did not want to blend in with the crowd. And that's why she didn't go to school. And that she marches the beat of her own drum and she's attracted to eclectic people. I'm like, girl, I know people just like you. But I kind of love it. She's like, y'all seem honest. Now, I don't know if her not going to school is tied to her family, if it's tied to her own sexuality, if it's tied to whatever. I don't know if that's the case. Again, they don't give us a lot on Hinata as of right now. So we got to wait and see, what we're going to get. But interesting. I do like, she's like, that's how Hinata-chan works her way into your heart. She definitely has mine. I like Hinata a lot so far. So when they decided, I do love when she tells Megu, she's like, we'll do the best we can. That's a great attitude to have about it, because it's like, yeah, you don't know how things are going to go. You don't know if you're going to be able to make this trip. After this episode, it's like, I don't even know if they're going to be able to go to Antarctica, but they're going to do the best that they can. And that's kind of the moral of the story, is to live life to its fullest. Do what you can. I do love Shinjuku and them showing up. Gunma! Gunma is where it is. So it's like Gunma to Shigaraki. Right? Okay, what is the difference? What is I want to know distance. Okay. It's about 262 miles, so that didn't help me on any sense with the raccoon figures why they were featured. Anyway, so they make it to Shinjuku, which I know it's not the same equivalency as Times Square in New York, but the way that they were describing all the billboards and the lights and everything, it made me feel how I have felt in Times Square in New York, just very overwhelmed from all of the sensory things, right? And even Shirase, I love her showing kind of her immaturity in that moment, and that she loses track of them. But yeah, they go to KABUKICHO Ichibangai, which is a sector, and there's just like mahjong, there's cabaret clubs, love hotels, mahjong tables. I thought for a moment that they were going to be gambling to get money to get on the plane. I thought that was part of the plan, was that they came here to play damn blackjack and win their hand. But luckily, that's not where we go. Yeah. Seems like it's got some red light district elements too, but I don't know if that's the case. It just gave me that vibe, especially the guy that's trying to hit on her. So yeah, free information center. And then we have the expedition meeting is happening here, which I'm assuming the expedition meeting is happening here because it's probably cheap to get like a hotel room. It's kind of like when I've been to events where they've been held at casinos, because the venues are pretty cheap because the hotels are making their money off the casino, so they can afford to have like lower rates on the meetup rooms. So yeah, so they send Kamari out to go and flirt with the boys of the expedition group. And then I love that she's like, and they're like, well, how old fashioned are you? And she's like, why? And then it's like, well, why don't you go out there, Hinata? You got the boobs. And then they decide to stick out Shirase, and she's like, no, they'll recognize me. And they're like, she never gives up, does she? Oh, so that girl on the train is standing beside the girl with the slightly curled hair that I don't know. Here's the thing. The woman with the black hair that showed up beside the woman that has the brown hair, I don't know if the woman because her hair kind of curls in the front, I don't know if that's the same woman that met her outside the ship, or if the friend has put her hair up since they met, and that's why she looks a little different. But yeah, this girl with the side braid kind of looks like she's related to the woman with the glasses. So what's her deal? That's going to be interesting. We're going to find out that next episode, but she's part of the expedition group, maybe. She's like, well, why did you bow to them? And they're like, who is that? Are they related maybe? Who knows? She's like, they know me. If they see me, they'll catch us. And then, yeah, she says, oh, there's 3 of them. So she might be, she has the one woman with the yellow shirt. Her hair was up in a ponytail, but it looks like her hair is dark. So she could have been the woman that she saw at the ship. Okay. So they run off. And I do love that Hinata says she can run short distances. I also love that Kamari has this moment of like, you know, that we're making memories even as we're running for seemingly no reason. She's like, isn't this funny? We're having this moment in our youth to like run away. And it made me think of, we used to go and like soap people's windows for Halloween when we were in kindergarten through like high school. You would go and soap people's windows in their car, where you take a bar of soap and you just soap their windows. It didn't do any damage to the car, but it was really annoying and they'd have to wash it off the next day. And I remember that my friend went to like one semi truck and was going to like soap the windows, and the guy was sleeping in the semi truck and woke up in that moment and was like, what are you doing? And we just like ran away, and the guy wasn't going to do anything, but it was that moment of running away, and it just felt very like youthful and like what you would do in the moment. And it gave off that kind of nostalgic vibe that Kamari experiences here when she bumps heads with Shirase and just runs off. But then they turn the corner, run into Hinata, and then the other women like corner her. So yeah, the other woman has black hair, so I'm guessing it might have been her and she just put her hair up. Interesting. But we don't know for sure. So yeah. So they're like, we weren't trying to kill you, but you can't go. And they're like, so your plan was to seduce a male member of the expedition and get them to smuggle you aboard. We can't take you with us. It may be a civilian expedition, but there are strict requirements. So my thing is, Shirase says that, you know I'm being unreasonable, but I want to go. My thing is, if she's known about this for 3 years, why didn't she ask to like go under the training to get certified? And my one thing I'm thinking about is if they didn't want to train her because of the connection to the mom and they thought it was like emotionally compromising. I don't know. And she's like, my mom is waiting there. And so then she, hands the money and says, if you need help with funding, let me become one of your sponsors. Now, granted, it's only $7,000, which we talked about last week, but still, that's $7,000 is $7,000. It's still quite a bit. And at first I thought she was going to take it, but then she said, no. She says, we're going to go. We don't need your money. So, and then that's when she says, she hands it back, and we cut to the like rainbow flag with the penguins on it that looks super cute, but they're screaming out her name, which I'm assuming is the mom's name. Like they're looking for her, and the winds are blowing, and the one vehicle stalled in the snow. So clearly they seem to have bad memories of losing the mom, and Antarctica is not all sunshine and rainbows and penguins. There's a lot of danger to it. And it cuts to the one woman that says, I understand how she feels. So they were both seemingly there when the mom disappeared. So what do we do with this? It says it's been 3 years. Curious. And like, are we okay for funding? And she says, well, I told you before, didn't I? It will be tough, but I have lots of ideas. And then she says, yeah, and here comes this other woman. And it's Shirase. So, and here's step one. So we don't know who Shirase is. We don't know her. We don't know her connection. If she's like some kind of philanthropist, we don't know. But Shirase is really sad that she was turned down. The plan didn't work. And these two girls are like, okay, so your mom. And I like that Hinata is very optimistic. And Shirase instantly goes into like brooding emo mode. Like she is just, just instant like brooding, murmuring all of these plans. I just gotta get some more money and she'll accept it. And they're like, yeah, I love Hinata says, oh, you're a glass half full type, huh? I love it. But I love that they both vote to not make her the leader anymore. We're like, you don't need to be the leader because you're too serious about this. You need to give it to us bright-eyed, bushy-tailed people that will come up with some objective ideas that are not emotionally compromising. Yep. Kabukichizawa Shirase is no longer the group leader. You are dismissed. And like, now let's go to Antarctica. And at the other end of the train is this one girl. What is she holding in her lap? Is it a hat? It's a hat. Why is she by herself on the train? Why is she not with the other girl that looked like her sister or something? What is going on? What is happening? What is this? What is this business? That's why I want to know. I do love the ED. It's super cute. I love they have little sprouts and they're growing like the flowers on top of their heads. Like there's a tulip and a daisy. It's super cute. I want to know. I want to know how this girl with the blue eyes, how's she going to get them to Antarctica? Because it seems like she might be the way that they get there. How's that going to work? And then there's all the constellations and all that. I'm curious. I did not anticipate for Shirase's plan to fall through as fast as it did. That's interesting. I'm curious to know who these characters are, why they are not letting her train or join the mission. There's lots of little bits of information that the series isn't telling us. So I'm really curious to know what we're going to get. And I'm sure the show is going to give us answers. But if you like Hinata's character, or if you thought that their plans this episode were absolutely cuckoo bonkers, I would love to know that down below. So I'm excited to read your comments. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I'm very curious to know where we're going to from here, so we shall see. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more A Place Further Than the Universe. Bye!